We're going to have wholesalers, we're going to have manufacturers, and we're going to have collaboration so that we can all evolve. We have to evolve with it, and we have to continue to provide places and opportunities for collaboration to occur so that everybody grows together.
It's another beautiful morning here in Melville, New York. I'm your host of Stockton Delivered, Mike Goodman, along with my co-host, Todd London. Welcome to the show. Today we're joined by a special guest, Matt Bruno, the Executive Director of NAWLA, which is the North American Wholesale Lumber Association. Our company is pretty heavily involved in that, Todd.
Yeah, look, there are a number of benefits that we've gotten from NAWLA so far. We have found employees from NAWLA. We have trained employees from NAWLA. We've gotten product lines as a result of NAWLA. And typically, if we have a problem that we don't know how to solve and we want some industry expertise, we've gotten that from NAWLA. And NAWLA over the past 2 years, like many consolidating companies, has really struggled with some membership. And Matt, in the last 2 years of his career here, has taken what has been a traditionally very strong company and made it even stronger. And I'm just excited to hear about all the things that he's going to do and all the things that he's doing to really make this organization that we've come to love even stronger.
Yeah, it's a great association. I personally am involved in some 10 groups, which is groups of people that get together and network. They really do a good job of putting people in the room together and have a lot of benefits. So excited to hear what Matt has to say. Excited to learn from Matt, and let's take it away.
All right, so welcome back to another episode of Stocked and Delivered. I'm here with my co-host, Michael Goodman. I'm Todd London, and today we have Matt Bruno, Executive Director of NAWLA. Matt, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So we're going to cover a spectrum of things, but I guess just to get started, do you want to tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you got there?
Sure. Well, again, I'm the Executive Director of the North American Wholesale Lumber Association. Let's see, I've been here now just about 16 months, but I've been in the nonprofit world for about 11 years. My career journey is a little bit eclectic. I actually went to college and studied clinical psychology for 4 years, and then decided to jump over and go back to school for some graphic arts degree, and started at a little graphics shop storefront in the suburbs of Chicago. That was my first real job in an industry. So again, it's kind of a weird track, right? So I started there, and then I worked in that business. We were like a little $250,000 shop, and we decided to make some big bets. This was in the early days of web to print, and we started our own web to print operation and grew it to $2 million in about 5 years. And it was pretty exciting. So I got like a front row seat on how to grow and scale a web-based business. So that experience led me to an opportunity where I started running international graphic construction programs. And for those of you who don't know what that is, that's essentially where we would go, like for Starbucks, and we would go into a location and scale it, and then come back and create a graphic package, and then go image the inside of the store. And that actually led me to sort of my, the longer part of my in-profit, if you will, career, where I then spent, the next about 7 years doing that. And I did it for companies like Starbucks, Sunoco, and MoneyGram International. And then what was interesting is I spent about 10 years working for manufacturing companies. So, we would have plants, and we'd manufacture the print and the product. And then I'd go out and oversee the installation of it. And then the last few years of my career, I actually did the same thing, but I did it for a wholesale distributor here in Chicago. And it was interesting because at the time, I had no idea about the world of trade associations and nonprofit trade associations. And one day I got a phone call from an association, and they asked if I would be interested in taking over the role as the North American director of a trade association. again, not knowing what that meant, I found out that it was a trade association was a place, a nonprofit that would be focused on connecting, manufacturers and wholesale distributors. And my unique sort of eclectic road of spending, 10 years working in manufacturing and then, about 5 years or so working in distribution sort of led to this perfect recipe of, working in trade associations. And so this was about 11 years ago. I worked, as a middle manager for a couple of years for a few different associations, and then finally got my first executive director role running a print and paper focused association. And so I did that for about 7 years and ran, different, essentially the association's focus was on the mills, the production mills across the U.S. and Canada, and then connecting them to the merchants. The big merchants, I'm sure some that Linda Meyer Monroe and the manufacturing side, Domtar. And then one day, I was looking at that excitement, that role had come to a good place, but I had heard that this NAWLA role was opening up, and I sort of looked at it and I thought it would be a great opportunity. And so I put my name in the hat, so to speak, in the ring, and went through a pretty rigorous interview process and was fortunate to be selected and take over. And that was about, again, 16 months ago. And it's been a pretty interesting journey since.
I'd like to learn a little more about associations. Just you've been in now for 11 years at different roles, an executive director of one, and you said middle management of others. Are they all the same? Are they different? Like, tell us just how they differ and size wise, or just organization wise, leadership wise. Just give us a little more insight of how those function.
Yeah, nonprofits and associations are really varied, right? Some focus on certification programs. So associations, say in the healthcare world, are really focused on helping, say, nurses and doctors stay up on their certifications and making sure they're educated. There are associations like ours that are in the trades, right? And most trade associations are focused on, in a very simplistic way, connecting buyers and sellers, right? How to improve and grow industries. And inside those trade associations, some of them are political, right? They have influence on Capitol Hill in the US, where they're, helping lobbying efforts to make their industry, reduce regulation or perhaps influence some changes to policy that might benefit the industry as a whole. Whereas other trade associations may simply be focused on education and networking, or a cause of some sort that they're focused on. Associations, not all, but ours specifically is a 501c6, so we are a nonprofit. And so a lot of times when you hear the word nonprofit and connecting them to foundations or associations, it's really sort of the structure that makes the difference. So, in a 501c3, essentially, you're taking grants and you're trying to use your funding arm is coming from, donations for the most part. Whereas a 501c6 is your income or your revenue is coming from your members. So members are all paying into, and that money is going to help benefit the members' businesses or the members individually, right? And so, not all associations are 501c6, not all are 501c3, and sometimes not all of them are any of those things, right? But it's really just focused on a cause. I think the simplest way to look at an association is, they typically are associated with a purpose and a mission, and that collective mission is what the members or the benefactors are all working towards. That makes sense.
For NAWLA specifically, do you want to tell the audience a little bit about what its specific purpose and mission is?
Yeah, I'm happy to. We're about 132-year-old association, which is, it's a significant legacy.
No doubt.
And it's funny because, it started 132 years ago because, as you both know, and I'm sure the audience knows, right, the lumber industry has been around a lot longer than 132 years. It's one of the oldest industries in North America. However, when the retail sector started really picking up, a lot of the mills and manufacturers were going direct to the retail side. And what that was causing was, a lot of pressure on pricing and allowing the retailers to kind of just price whatever they want, right? They could buy it at dirt cheap. And so a couple of, at the time, a couple wholesalers, again, this is 133 years ago, they said, this seems unfair, right? Like we have to create some price separation. We have to be able to give consumers price competition so that we can keep them, level and give, customers a better way of buying. And so that was essentially the basis of NAWLA 132 years ago. So they started in New York City and then they expanded from there.
In your mind, where does NAWLA go next? What's working really well that you want to expand upon? What's something that you're saying, hey, I think there's room for improvement or growth here?
That's a great question. So first I will say this, that, when I came into NAWLA and what was attractive to me was, I've had not an extensive experience, but 11 years is pretty good experience and exposure to the association world. And what made this opportunity really exciting to me is because I look at I typically would look at three metrics for health in an association. The number one thing is the industry, right? So associations are, as you would imagine, are very tied into the industries they serve. So if an industry is healthy, the association should be healthy too, right? And NAWLA was healthy. NAWLA is healthy. And so for me, that's like, okay, great. That's check that box. That's fantastic. The second thing I would look at would be, what's how engaged are the board and the members? And as you just stated, right, like the engagement is really strong. The board is highly engaged. The membership attends things, which is great. They participate in our benefits, which is great. And then the last box I always look at is, what about the staff, right? Does the staff like to be here? Are they doing good work? And in this case, they were. Most of our staff has been here a while, and they've been doing good work. And so you might ask, like, what would you do, right? Like, well, if you're coming in all these things,
sure, check the boxes, yeah.
What's right? Yeah, like what? I see opportunity for huge growth, right? I see a lot of opportunity for this association to maybe expand upon 132 years of strength and what I think is highly valued in the marketplace. And I just think that we're not touching enough companies. I look at the opportunity and I see, we have about 400 members, and that's great. That's a strong basis. But when I evaluate the market, I just think that we're ripe for opportunity. And look, and this isn't meant to speak poorly about my predecessors. Everything has a cycle, right? And I think NAWLA is in this cycle where we can look at a lot of what we do for our members and really evolve what we're doing. So yes, things are hitting the marks, and yes, but when I look at the products and service we offer, a lot of them are have been very much the same for a long time. And again, you look at the metrics, right? And the metrics are, you could say that there's nothing, why would we do anything? But just because, it worked 5 years ago, it certainly doesn't mean it's going to work 5 years from now. So when I evaluated this opportunity, I saw, okay, is there room for growth? Absolutely. Is there room for evolution and efficiency? Absolutely, right? Is there room for creating innovation? 100%. And that's what I'm hoping to do with NAWLA. So to come full circle to your question, what we've done at NAWLA just simply over time has created opportunities for our members to have a career life cycle with NAWLA, where we have entry level things, where we have mid-management things, and we have senior level things. But we never really kind of explained it that way to our members, right? This is how, when you have new employees at your company, this is how to get them trained. And this is where they go next. And then this is where they go from here. Right. So one of the things, we're doing right away is we're creating that efficiency. We're creating that story to say, look, we have the opportunities for our member companies to train new people through going to our Wood Basics programs. We can introduce them to the next level of their career by going to the Young Emerging Lumber Professionals program. From there, they can start attending the regional meetings that we do, 6 or 7 every year across Canada and the US. And then, obviously, then you get to come to this big party at Traders Market, right? Where everybody's having a great time and you get to see this thriving industry. And then someday, if you're lucky enough, you'll get to go to this executive event that we're going to be launching soon, right? So you can really kind of see how you go through your career. And frankly, that's what, if you go back and you ask some of our past board members, you say, why are you a part of NAWLA? And they say the most impactful thing were the relationships I gained by going to these events, right? Or participating in these benefits. And so we have to align our business with what the future needs, the new generations, so that we're still doing and delivering on that same promise.
Good answer. Thank you. So you mentioned you're 400 members currently. And who are the members?
Yeah, good question. Yeah. We have 4 member types, and there's 2 of them are our primary members, right? So first are obviously our wholesalers, and we define a wholesaler as a company that does a majority of their sales through, the wholesale of forest products and building materials. Next, is the manufacturers, and these are the companies whose primary sales are to the wholesalers, and they remanufacture forest products and related building materials. And we have like the service affiliates, right? These are the ones that sort of aid the efforts of both the wholesalers and the manufacturers. So technology companies, logistics providers, those types of things. And then lastly, we have associate members, and these are going to be our adjacent, right? So we have a lot of association partnerships, say with like BC Wood, SFPA.
Great, thanks. So we have 400 now. There's opportunity for growth. What's what they use in a lot of tech companies? The TAM, the word TAM, total addressable market. So how many are there? Like if there's 400 now, and you say there's opportunity for more, what's the entire world look like if you were to get everybody?
Well, so if we are structured the way we are today, I think there's probably about somewhere between 3,000 to 5,000 companies that we could be working with. A little bit wider, you could jump that number up to 48,000.
When you're talking about opportunity for growth, are you more specifically focused on growing the membership of NAWLA, or are you more specifically focusing taking members and bringing them up through the organization?
When I look at growth, I look at it, and I just metric wise, we'll look at numbers, right? We'll say how many people are attending, how many member companies do we have, how much revenue are we getting? But frankly, I see it more in the way of influence, right? How much influence are we putting in the marketplace? And how I'm going to measure influence is a little bit more about the impact of our benefits that we provide across the board. So if you were to put a metric against that, that's going to be, how many people are attending, reading, taking our education. We have online education that is free to the industry. So I want to see those numbers go up, right? And then what I want to see then is the eclecticness, probably the best word to use, but of the diversity is maybe the best word to use, of our membership. So right now we are heavily concentrated in certain parts of the US and certain parts of Canada. And what I want to see, what I think we need to see as an association, is a wider breadth, right? So again, for our years here, our membership is not as strong as it should be in the Southeast, right? Like for that being the highest growth market, we should be heavily saturated there, right? And the Pacific Northwest is we're really strong there. And I think NAWLA has followed sort of the history of the industry, right? But we haven't moved as quickly as the industry. So we're heavily consolidated in Pacific Northwest, Vancouver, BC, and then down into Portland, Washington area. And as you go east, we have a good amount of members in the Northeast. So Toronto, Ontario, Quebec, down into Maine and New York.
132 years ago, it was founded in New York. A lot of New York in the area uses Doug fir, which comes from the West. Do you think there's a correlation
Right.
there of why the membership is strong?
Plenty of sense.
Yeah.
Mm.
Why the membership is
Yeah,
strong,
100%.
strong in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah,
So-
100%. And again, like this is a problem, and this is where I think I've been able to lean on some of my my expertise, or I guess my learning from managing other associations. Is associations do have a tendency to sort of follow the history. They're always a step behind in a way, right? Just because we don't have the resources and we don't have the flexibility world to pivot quickly. Like, we've got a lot of stakeholders that we have to influence or take along for the ride, if you will. So if we are deciding to make a big shift in business to the Southeast, you can imagine that there's people in the Pacific Northwest that are going to be like, wait, why are we always talking about SYP now? Like, why are we always talking about Eastern materials? Like, what happened to Doug fir and cedar and right? And so we have to be strategic about making those shifts.
From your perspective, I think I understand the geography thing. Is there a segment of mill, manufacturer, or distributor that you're looking for that you don't think that you currently have a great grasp on?
That's a really good question that I would love to give more thought to. I think my gut reaction is always, right? I think, so, thinking that we're like the wholesale lumber side of this industry, right? Where my immediate thought is always going to how is the wholesaler changing? What is the wholesaler doing differently now that they were not doing 5 years ago? And what I think, to answer that question, I look at companies like yours, and I look at some other of our wholesalers who have started to diversify a little bit, not just because they're going to start representing building materials companies, or now we're going to represent this non-lumber product. I'm not as much concerned about that. What I am interested is I'm seeing wholesalers starting to have a more active role in manufacturing. So whether they're bringing in remanufacturing, which I don't think that's new, but I think more wholesalers are doing that now. But I think where wholesalers are, frankly, in a little bit more of a, what's the right word, advanced position, is that they are adopting technology a lot faster than the manufacturers and finding ways to marry automation with labor to enhance their capabilities quicker. So, and what I mean by that is I look at some of the wholesale companies that I've visited over the last 16 months. I've had the ability to visit about 35, 40 member companies and wholesaler and just trying to really get a feel for the industry. And you can see that some of the more successful wholesalers are starting to find this marriage of those things, right? Like, where can we find efficiency by adding just a small piece of manufacturing that maybe we already have an existing customer base that is asking for this a lot. So we're going to just put it in-house and capture some, better margin. It's a little long-winded answer to your question, but I think what I want to find are more of those wholesalers that are trying to diversify and kind of lean into the technology and not shy away from the challenges that it creates.
To give us a little more insight of how it's all the changes that are taking place and what the companies are now.
Yeah, I mean, I think your statement is definitely fair, right? I think wholesalers, just by nature, have the ability to pivot and change their business, and again, which is probably why they're, a little bit more. They've had a little bit more staying power, but when we look at a wholesaler, we're not saying they have to be all about lumber, right? Just like you said. I mean, our definition of a wholesaler essentially in our bylaws is, a majority, so 51% of their sales are through the wholesale channel of forest products and building materials, right? So, I mean, I look at our wholesalers now, and we certainly have a few that are still very focused on the lumber side, and we'll just call it forest product side. So maybe they're doing more than just selling 2x4s, right? Maybe they're selling cedar shingles and they're selling fence posts, and they're focused on forest products. But I would say that a majority of our members are definitely more diversified than that, and more diversified in building materials, to represent a wider array of that side of the industry.
this may be controversial. I don't know. Or maybe you're still challenged to define it. What is the wholesale channel? How do you define that?
Yeah, I mean, frankly, that's a tough question. I mean, like, we look at that as like the wholesalers being the primary sales to the retail, to the yards. They're going to be the first one down from the retail channel, right? So who their buyers typically are, again, the big retail stores, the home goods stores, and then the construction yards, the builders specifically. So that's how I would say maybe we look at them as being, that's their channel, and then the manufacturers are the step behind or below, where they're giving the wholesalers the product to sell to that channel. And you're right, like we're definitely seeing some go arounds, right? We're definitely seeing some places where there are manufacturers that are bypassing the wholesalers. And look, there is technology now available that makes that easier, and that's a challenge that we're faced with as well.
And I think we're evolving quicker than we've evolved probably over the 132 years. It's definitely happening now in a quicker rate. And I'm sure you're hearing it as an association trying to figure out who your members should or shouldn't be.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say this though, that we have to look at the truths, right? And so what are some truths that I look at in trying to think about the industry from our perspective is, are there always going to be wholesalers? Yeah. And are there always going to be manufacturers? Yeah. So we know that those are two fundamental truths. And the reality is if we want to live in a world where we're saying, no, you do this and no, you do that, then we're just never going to grow together and we're never going to grow this industry. So our role, and frankly, I feel like it's a pretty important role, is to continue to create that collaboration of, right, like you said, like we don't want you to slow down. We don't want you to not grow your business. And by the same means, I'm sure you guys don't want, the manufacturers to slow down and not be able to grow their businesses, right? So those are fundamental truths, right? We're going to have wholesalers, we're going to have manufacturers, and we're going to have collaboration so that we can all evolve. At the end of the day, more nimble, more capable manufacturers only helps the wholesalers. And many of, especially some of these bigger mills, they need a wholesale channel. They need another route to sell into because, frankly, it's so diversified. They can't provide all the product categories that you're being asked to provide right now, and the logistical capabilities and so on and so forth. So, if we as an association continue to hold those truths together and think about it might change and it should change and it's going to evolve. We have to evolve with it, and we have to continue to provide places and opportunities for collaboration to occur so that everybody grows together and nobody grows off on their own.
I know we've harped on, I think I really wanted to learn more about how it's changing. We harped on it a lot, but in the end of the day, putting them all in a room together, whoever they may be, right? And whoever they may be in 132 years from now, that's the value. That's an incredible value.
Yeah. Every industry's got people that's known each other forever, right? And the families and all that kind of stuff. That's industry wide. But there's something different about this industry. And I would say, obviously I'm biased, but this association, right? Which is that you walk into those rooms of collaboration and you've got direct competitor sitting next to you, both of you talking to a manufacturer, and it's everything's fine, everything's copacetic, right? So there's this weird relationship dynamic in this industry that seems to be just, I don't know if endemic is the right word because that's usually negatively associated, but just prevails over it. It's amazing. And I think to your point, that's why what you just said is so right on, right? Is that we can just put them in a room and they figure out that okay, there are certain things I can say here and not here, but I don't mind sitting next to, company Y because look, they're going to do their business, I'm going to do mine. And maybe we can get something together. I don't know, but so I think that is a pretty awesome thing about this industry.
So I'm going to transition. I want to talk about just NAWLA, the organization, for a second, if that's okay. I guess if you could, from top at the executive level and then all the way down the ladder down to an entry-level employee. Do you want to talk about what NAWLA is currently doing to kind of engage these members and kind of help teach them and grow?
Our team, I think is fantastic about identifying ways both operationally and then sort of, I guess more strategically influencing our member and helping our member companies to do more in the industry. So what I mean by that is we've created a lot of opportunity over the years, right? You guys know we already talked about traders market, and I mentioned earlier some of our other networking things, but they have, and again, why this comes back to the volunteers, right, is we've heard loud and clear that we need to create ways for the members to support their own individuals inside their companies, right? So that was the birth of Wood Basics. And then it became a question of, well, that's great, but you only do that 2 times a year. And we limit those classes to 25, and they're going into the forest and doing all these things. But I've got somebody I just hired yesterday. Like, we have to have some. So that birthed NAWLA Academy. So now we have a year-round training program that does a virtual tour of a forest and does the same thing that Wood Basics does at, a lot lower cost to create, again, more pathways. So, so strategically, we're thinking about how, I'm sure the same way a lot of our member companies are, is like, how do we draw attention back? I think we look at generational change in a lot of ways. The old ways that trade associations used to be successful is that, I think, as earlier was said, was you put people in a room and that's all they needed, right? But I think younger generations coming in need more than that. They need a little bit more, more touch points. And so we're trying to figure out is how does NAWLA create more and more meaningful touch points? Not by sending spam and texts and, whatever. It's more about, like, when you think of NAWLA, you think of premier opportunities. So specifically, right, how can we evolve Traders Market to make that the must attend event of the industry for everyone in the industry, right? We want to make it attractive. We want to make it meaningful for the exhibitors. But one thing that's certain is that we want people walking out of that event being like, holy cow, sign me up for next year, right? And then, you take it from there. And I think you could make that same statement about everything we do, right? We want to make sure that NAWLA goes from being just present to being the best and the most impactful place to be for everyone in the industry.
And so I will say we're obviously super users. So high praise. What do you do in the circumstance that you have non-members that are utilizing all of the benefits of a NAWLA but not becoming members? How do you attack that?
Yeah, it's a challenge. So, we've been very, I think, open in the past about just sort of let people, play on the fringe, so to speak. And I think there's a couple ways we attack that. Number one is, I think for some of our core business things, we have to kind of put a little bit more of a fence up and make that a little bit more challenging to do. But at the same time, provide opportunities, for them to do that, right? So if Traders Market truly is the only benefit that you want and the only thing that you want from NAWLA, maybe we should consider giving you a pathway in, because, we've seen times where people are like, fine, I'll just go rent out, a building across the street and then I'll just entertain there, right? So how do we bring them in?
And you have the balance of, like, I want new people walking. I don't want to close it off because I need the new people. Yeah. So how do I attract new people and keep it interesting enough where they want to come and want to participate?
Well, and that's exactly right. So, and that was what I was saying before. It's like, we've got to make the inside so impactful and so important to everyone's business that they don't want to leave that floor, right? Like that. Like, look, I can go find, that company up the street, or I can stay here because A, it's more interesting and exciting, and B, I'm going to get way more value by being here than going up the street.
What are the 3 other parts of the top diamond fields? Or
want to call it diamond mine.
Diamond mine.
Diamond mine.
I'm not sure it's a diamond field.
A better way.
Well, I like going to the diamond fields personally. But But are there three other areas you're trying to highlight or focus really intentionally on that you really want to bring awareness to of the areas in the mind?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll go back to what I said, our two core pillars, right? Our education and networking. And so our core pillar of networking, no doubt, is Traders Market. And I'll just mention, we're making some changes to it and they'll be felt this year. And one of the big changes is that we're getting rid of sort of the old style luncheon that we used to require everyone to go, and instead replacing it with more floor time, excuse me. So instead of 8 hours show floor time, you're getting 10. Good for our attendees and good for the exhibitors. And we're going to insert some more exciting things. We're going to do some more activation, what we call some more exciting things on the floor to try to keep people there. So we'll continue to make that our sort of our diamond, to stay with the metaphor of our networking.
So every time we do one of these podcasts, we have a couple of segments. Segments are all aptly named after a lumber homage. The first segment's called Saw It Coming. It's about future predictions. If you had to talk to us about one trend that we should expect to see from NAWLA in the next 10 years that becomes an ever-growing portion of your business, what would that look like?
I think, to simplify it, the word is growth. I think what you're going to see from NAWLA over the next few years is growth. And I mean that both from a membership count to region expansion to, frankly, everything we do in our business. We're not going to add a series of new things, but we're going to get really damn good at them. I'm going to tell you right now. And that's going to provide more, not only growth in numbers, but growth in depth inside of our companies. We get right now roughly about, on average, anywhere between 2,800 to 3,000 individuals that we touch right now through one of our programs or services every year. I expect that to grow significantly over the next few years. And we're going to do that by diversifying not only our membership base, but again, our regional specific opportunities for our members.
Is consolidation in the industry going to speed up or slow down, in your opinion?
Honestly, I think it's going to continue to maintain the current rate it's at. I hear a lot that consolidation is rising, but I think you can make an argument that the current market is going to create some more consolidation. And on the same sense, you could say that it's, shifting policies are going to cause people to retract from consolidation. So, it is an ever-present thing in not just our industry, but all industries.
Yeah.
And as the needs change of your customers, the birth of new markets are going to change, right? Who would have said 10 years ago that SYP was going to be as big as it is now, right? And so I think that consolidation is just something we all deal with, and it's going to be here. And I don't know that I don't think it's going to grow significantly, but I also don't think it's going away.
So our next segment is called Material Moments, more personal stories. So what's a moment in your career that really changed how you think about the industry? So this industry in particular, maybe you could refer to as association industry or the lumber, which is only 16 months lived so far.
Yeah, I think it's, and I'm not just saying this because of the current time, but I will say it really is the whole situation going on with Canada. I came into this industry 16 months ago, not knowing much, a little bit about the industry from the paper side and paper mill and pulp production. But as far as this industry is concerned, these last few months have been just sort of really eye-opening for me. In the not only the interdependence of the Canadian market and our wholesalers and our association, frankly, but just how passionate, how much passion is coming from our Canadian our members about how we could, if they're what can we do, how can we help them, right? And so for me, that's it sounds, I don't know, maybe short-sighted, but I think it's really been interesting to be a part of, and it's just really been impactful for me. Of okay, we from a business standpoint, like we've got to do more. Like we've got to be able to create So this is long-winded again, but I look at our business in Canada, and I heard some things these last few weeks where it's like, well, NAWLA only exists to create benefit for the U.S. market. Every Canadian member is only there to benefit the U.S. market. And I look at that and I say, man, that's shocking to me. Like, we are the North American Wholesale Lumber Association. Like, we are supposed to represent all of North America, and not for one business's benefit over another's, for the entire supply chain. And so that was shocking to me to say, like, we are doing something really wrong here if this is the perception from a good portion of our membership. I mean, about 25% of our membership is based in Canada. And they think that the primary purpose of our group is to benefit only the US market. We've got to do better. So far in my short time, from an industry perspective, that's been the most impactful thing I've noticed.
And that's definitely eye-opening. And I could see that. I mean, all of the events take place in the US for the most part. I'm biased. I'm in the US, but yeah, that's eye-opening, and I'm sure you could find ways to maybe address that moving forward. Yeah. That's a good story. That's a good story. Thanks for sharing.
In your 16 months at NAWLA, what's the biggest moment of pride?
Well, I would say and it's hard for me to take credit for this because I can't really say I did anything. So I'm going to default to my team. But we reversed a 3-year downward trend of membership last year. And, a lot of that work was done from the team, thinking of new ways that we can go after membership. How do we talk differently to our members? And the thing that's been exciting is that it's continued on this year. So we are, 4 months into our fiscal year here. We filed the calendar, and typically what we've seen from our members in the past has been that we've really kind of trailed membership up to Traders Market. And then when people notice that they're not members and they have to be in order to go, they start filling out membership. So we typically, we average anywhere between, at this point in prior years, we would be at about, 40% filled on membership, which you could imagine if you only had 40% of your revenue at this point, it'd be a little bit of a challenge. At this point now, this year, we're at 68% renewals. So 2 years running, we're moving faster and acquiring more business than we've had in the past. And again, I can push that down or look down and say that this was direct result of the team coming together, thinking of new ideas and how to attack the problem, and then playing it out and actually making some adjustments along the way. And now, again, a year later, we're having the same success. And so that's a prideful thing, because that's a really important thing for our business, is that not only the membership see value and are renewing early, but that we're bringing in that revenue early so we can make some strategic decisions later in the year.
Well, I'm sure that NAWLA is very grateful and lucky to have you. As they say, in a field of mines, a field of diamonds, you are a diamond in the rough. Or mine. So we certainly appreciate your time today, Matt. Thank you so much for joining us and educating us on what you do and what NAWLA is trying to get accomplished. Can't thank you enough.
That was great. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, guys. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate the opportunity.
So a pretty good conversation with Matt Bruno. NAWLA had some pressures that he was under in the very beginning of this role. And as they say, pressure makes diamonds in diamond fields. So I thought he did a really great job explaining what they're doing, what they're going to do. It gives me a lot of confidence that NAWLA is going to be here to stay, probably century, if not centuries more. And that's just kind of exciting to hear.
I enjoyed our discussion about, what is a wholesaler, what is going on in terms of the changes of the wholesaler. It's a lot going on. The supply chain is changing. The business model is slightly changing, and just interesting to see from his perspective who's a member, who's not a member, and how does he navigate that as the changes take place. So thanks, Matt. Really appreciate learning, and looking forward to seeing you in the future.